Hi everyone, it's Alyssa and this is Always Cinema Chic. Today I am so excited to talk to you guys about the hidden gems of 2020. I love talking about good movies, and this is just going to be a list of films that, maybe don't necessarily make any kind of awards list, and they may not have been seen by tons of people, but they were just really good films. And so I saw 104 films from 2020 alone this past year. So I feel like I've seen a good pool, but I still haven't seen everything. So, for instance, I haven't seen like First Cow yet, which I know is crazy and I need to watch it. And I definitely will before the Academy Awards. But I also haven't seen Tesla or Baby Teeth or Sylvie's Love. And these were movies that I really felt like they could have gotten onto this sort of hidden gems category. Just didn't see it yet. So I would love to know what movies you guys have seen that you feel like maybe not everyone has seen it, or maybe because it's on a certain streaming platform, not as many people have seen it that maybe would have seen it in a different year and in a different environment. So I'm going to start off the list with some honorable mentions. They don't quite make the top 10, but I thought they were really interesting films at the least. Maybe not perfect films, but something different. And I always like watching something different, even if it's not perfectly made. So the first one on that list is Horse Girl, which is on Netflix. And I could see people disliking it because it is so abstract and it's really out there. But Alison Brie's performance was really something to watch. I think she's one of those underrated actresses that when you just give her the right role, she puts everything into it. And I cannot say anything different for this role, where you really are understanding what it's like to have schizophrenia and how everything she's saying just sounds so logical because you're seeing it from her perspective. And so I thought it was an interesting film, not a perfect film about mental illness, but at the same time, her performance was worth watching. Another great one from this past year that was just funny and different and was actually recommended to me by a friend was a movie called Extraordinary. And that is sort of this weird mix of genres where it's a kind of like a ghost story, paranormal story dealing with the devil, but there's a lot of comedic elements and it takes place in the UK. So you have that kind of British comedy, and it's about a woman who deals with the paranormal, and then this guy whose daughter has been taken over by this entity, and he's got to save his daughter, but he's also got his dead wife's ghost in the house who really doesn't like that he's talking to this other woman, and it's really funny. And then you add into that Will Forte, who is this pop star, and I won't say what his role is, but he's just super funny in the movie. So definitely worth watching. I believe you can watch that movie on Canopy. So if you have that app, and you should, because you can just get it through the library for free, it's definitely worth watching. The next movie that would be on my sort of didn't quite make it into the top 10 is The Lodge, which is a horror film, and it's not a perfect movie. And the ending is sort of, I don't know, it's sort of silly, but there were images in that film that stuck with me. It tapped into some of my greatest fears. There is so much potential. These are the same filmmakers who did Goodnight Mommy, which was also a terrifying film. But it was worth it enough for me. And Riley Keough gives a really good performance. There were certain shots where it felt like a scaled down version of The Shining, because you're in this big lodge mansion house in the middle of nowhere in the winter, and you're kind of stuck there, and there's a lot of isolation. I noticed I picked a lot of movies where people are isolated, which probably has something to do with the year that we've had. So, and then the last one that didn't quite make the top 10 list, and I am actually surprised it didn't make the top 10 for me, because I've been talking about it with so many people that I know. So this is The Assistant with Julie Gardner. And I think what made it just barely make the top 10 is because it's definitely a slower film. It brings up some of the themes and ideas from Promising Young Woman, but Promising Young Woman does it in such a kinetic, sort of energetic feeling way, whereas this is very realistic, which can make it slow at times. Julie Garner's performance is just outstanding in this film and so worth watching. But it is just one day in the life of this woman who works for this movie executive. And you can see how things are not right, but how the character would maybe not say anything in previous days. And she just has to put up with this environment to sort of get through it to get to the next level of her career. But definitely a movie worth watching. I'm pretty sure that it's on Hulu. I'm pretty sure I saw it on Hulu, but I also know that it's on Canopy as well. So let's get into the top 10 hidden gems of 2020. So coming in at number 10, I'll keep checking my trusty computer over here, is a movie from Netflix called Uncorked. And this was just one of those sort of fun, heartwarming movies that you just need to watch every now and then. And it stars Mamadou Athie, who was also in Black Box this past year. And he is such an actor to watch. He's so strong. I actually find that he's often stronger than the material that he's given in a film. And this film had a lower budget and some of the acting was maybe not perfect, but he was. And so this is about someone who wants to become a sommelier when his parents want him to learn to run the restaurant that they have, and he wants something greater for himself and something that's more refined feeling and luxurious. And he's very into this world of wine, and his family just doesn't understand why he wants this so badly. And so it's one of those films where you get to see someone try to achieve something that they want, and it's really just sweet. And it's nice to watch something sweet every now and then with a really good performance. So coming in at number 9 was just such a random pick one night that my husband had picked, called Get Duked on Amazon Prime. And it's another British movie. It's a comedy, it's a horror. Also, it's got so many different sort of genres mixing into it. And it sort of felt to me like a mix between The Hunt, which came out this past year, but it was way, way better than The Hunt. But also a little bit of Midsummer, but not as good as that movie, because we all know I love that movie. But it's about a group of boys who sort of, I don't know if they would technically be called chavs, but it's like what I think of when I think of what a chav is like in England. So, they're more likely to get into trouble, and there's a certain like cadence and way of speaking, but they're really funny. And so they're doing this walk, and as they're out there on this walk that they have to do because they got in trouble for something, they are getting hunted by someone. But it's really just, it's funny. The way the kids interact with each other was just hysterical. They had great chemistry. There were certain scenes that were, really laugh out loud funny for me. So Get Duked was something I've never heard anyone speak about this year, and I just really, really enjoyed it. All right, coming in at number 8, also on Amazon Prime, is The Vast of Night. And so this is that sort of genre-heavy 1950s feeling. Is there an alien invasion? And so it's about a DJ and someone who works on phone lines, and she's found, certain noises and she can't identify what it is. And so she goes to her friend who's this DJ, and they try to figure out what's going on in the town this night. But everyone else has no idea that something's going on because they think there was a basketball game or something that was going on in the school. And it's so dark. It's so moody. It has almost that sort of X-Files feel. And I just loved every second of it. And it's how you can take a film with, what seemed like a pretty low budget, but really tonally have such a specific point of view. And the acting was really good and just so worth watching on Amazon Prime if you have not seen that film. All right, coming in at number 7, also on Amazon Prime. I guess they had a lot of movies that I liked. So that is Uncle Frank, and that stars Paul Bettany. And I don't remember her name, but it's the girl from It, Chapter 1, who's in it as well. And so Paul Bettany plays her uncle Frank, and his father has passed away. He has to go to the funeral. He is closeted to his family, but then his niece knows about the relationship, this long time relationship that he's had with Wally. And so they go on this road trip to go back to the funeral. But what they don't realize is that Wally has followed them and he wants to be a part of it too. And he wants to meet the family. And I mean, it is probably the best role Paul Bettany has ever had. He is so quiet and internal, and it's such an excellent performance. The movie is written and directed by Alan Ball, and so it definitely has his kind of feeling and tone, but on a bit of a quieter scale. It's not that, American Beauty sort of a story. It definitely feels more personal than that. And so Paul Bettany was excellent, but I want to make sure that I get his name right. Peter Macdessi, who plays Wally, who is also Alan Ball's partner in real life. He was the standout in this movie to me. He was just so warm and loving and open and funny. And it was just one of those movies also that just felt really nice and warm and heartbreaking, but also heartwarming at the same time. And I don't know anyone who's seen this film. So a lot of these movies just come out, on Amazon Prime, but I don't see a lot, or when I talk to even people who watch a lot of movies, they haven't seen these. So definitely worth watching. Number 6 is the only horror movie that is on the list, and it's the Australian horror film Relic. I walked into it thinking I will like this. I like Emily Mortimer. It was interesting to see Bella Heathcote in something different that wasn't like a Tim Burton-y sort of a role, but it turned out to be one of those films that it has a very clear metaphor throughout. So it's a multi-generational film, and it's about Emily Mortimer and her daughter are going to check on her mother, right? Because people in the town haven't seen her for a while. They don't know if she's ill or if there's dementia or she's not acting right exactly. And then you come to see that in the house, there's this sort of mold that is growing within the house, and it's entering into the grandmother's body. And so it's got sort of these haunted house feelings to it. But the meaning of the film is so much more than that. And it was one of the only horror movies where I genuinely was crying at the end of the movie, which is not something that you expect. The ending of this film is what just sealed the deal for me. It was so beautiful, and the idea of like what it's like to go through a person's head who's going and who has a certain perspective. I don't want to give anything away. It was just really lovely, and the last moments were really heartbreaking and beautiful, and not at all what I expected in the film. So if you haven't seen Relic, I really do think that it is worth watching. Okay, coming in at number 5 is a movie that I probably wouldn't put as a hidden gem. I think a lot of people know about it, but if I were to ask the like average person, have you seen Palm Springs? I don't think they would know what I was talking about. And I just loved it so much. It wasn't on, say, like my top 15 list, but it was such a funny comedy. So you can see Palm Springs on Hulu. It made news in Sundance last year because it sold for the highest price of any film up until that point. Now I know Coda actually beat that record, but up until that point it did. And you would think, oh, a movie that is about like a Groundhog's Day sort of scenario that has been done so many times. Over that kind of a film, but this looks at that genre of film in a little bit of a different way, so that it's not just about the characters, but there's a larger sort of philosophical issue and the idea of being stuck in a space in your life. And I've never seen that sort of film used in that way so explicitly. And Christina Milioti was so funny in it. Also, the two of them together, Andy Samberg and her, I just felt like this was a genuinely funny movie that had something to say. And it was quick, it was fast paced, the writing was excellent, everything about it just worked really well. And it was just another fun movie. And it's nice to see a well done, fun sort of a film. All right, coming in at number 4, not as fun of a film, but definitely worth watching and having some kind of an opinion about is The Nest. Now, The Nest was directed by the same person who did Martha, Marcy May, Marlene, which was one of my favorite films that came out from that year whenever it came out. His name is Sean Durkin. And so this stars Jude Law and Carrie Coon, and it's about a married couple. They're living in America, but he gets an opportunity to go back to England and to have a job that could provide a lot more to his family potentially. And so he ends up renting out a mansion that is entirely too big. And you start to see bit by bit that he's not exactly who he says he is. And maybe he's not as strong at his job as he appears to be in the beginning of the film. And to me, this is such a standout performance for Jude Law, because it takes all of these movies where he's just been the charming guy, like the most charming person you can imagine, right? So when I think of like the talented Mr. Ripley, or even when he was in the new Pope, he so effortlessly fits into that sort of charming character. And so here it sort of turns it a little bit, because he uses his charms, but he's not entirely who he says he is. And then looking at Carrie Coon and her performance and how she sees her husband and this sort of disintegrating relationship, but it happens so slowly throughout the film. It is a very slow film, but I feel like that is probably realistic to what a disintegrating marriage feels like. And that's not to say I'm giving anything away about the ending, because it really is a film where it's like you have to see the ending to have your perspective on what's going on. But man, there are a few passive aggressive moments that are outstanding. He also does such a good job of, I didn't know if this was going to turn into a horror film. Like, I knew it wasn't a horror film, but there were moments where the house felt like it was haunted. The shots are just gorgeous in this. There are so many sort of long takes throughout the entire film. There are a lot of long shots. You feel very distant. You feel very cold from everyone. You don't have a lot of close-ups, but that all works to what the film is ultimately trying to do. All right, coming in at number 3. This one is on Hulu. So Shirley, starring Elizabeth Moss. This was... And Michael Stolberg, I'll say as well, because I just adore him. I think he's such an incredible character actor. But this movie is wild. It's crazy. There are elements that reminded me of Black Bear, because I saw Black Bear before I saw this, and Black Bear is on a different list for me. But this really is the kind of biopic I want to watch, because it has nothing to do, or very little to do, with reality, I should say. So the story is about Shirley Jackson, who wrote The Lottery, who did The Haunting of Hill House, and it's about her marriage to this guy who is a professor. All of that is true. But then this couple comes in and she's writing a book, and she starts to see aspects of the character and the girl who's staying in the house with her. And it's just always blurring what is going on within Shirley's head with what the reality is. And Elizabeth Moss's performance is just killer in this. And everyone was talking about how great she is in Invisible Man, and she is great in that film. But to me, this is a better performance. There's so much going on internally. You can read everything that's going on in her head on her face, and it's just an outstanding performance. Visually, this movie is stunning. It's so lush. It's so green. It had a color palette that I just wanted to swim in. It was just everything I love. It was like those browns and those bluish sort of greens, and the way that the light would hit the camera. It was just such a gorgeous movie, and the writing was really interesting. I wasn't crazy about the other main actress who was in it, Odessa Young, but I think that's also part of the character, so maybe she just did a really good job. But worth seeing if you haven't seen it. But just keep in mind, this isn't your average film by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. And then coming in at number 2, which is more of a predictable film that you could be watching, and I think any other year I wouldn't say this was a hidden gem, but because On the Rocks was on Apple Plus, I don't know anyone who has seen this movie. This isn't a streaming service that many people have access to. And it's a shame because I really think this is one of Sofia Coppola's kind of standout films for just how normal it feels and relatable and genuine. And Rashida Jones is just so great as a wife who is a writer. She's a mother, but she's not really writing so much. So she feels more like she's a stay-at-home mom. Her husband has a business. It's taking off. He's spending so much time traveling. He's never home. And she thinks that he is cheating on her. And this is only sort of, echoed by her father, played by Bill Murray, who wants to go on this whole wild goose chase to see if he is actually cheating on his daughter. And so the story is really not about that. It's about the father and the daughter and the relationship and the strained relationship that's between these two characters. This did get notoriety, and I know that Bill Murray did get nominated for supporting actor or actor, I forget, for the Golden Globes for a comedy. But I just don't know many people who have seen this. And I know that Apple Plus is doing a thing where it's like you could get a year for free and then get $5 a month after that. And, there's not much on that I feel like is necessarily worth it. But getting to see this movie, so even if you got it and then canceled it so you could see this movie, it would be worth it because I liked seeing Sofia Coppola do something that was so genuine. It felt so New York and small community in New York. I just really liked it. And when I think about things like The Bling Ring, which I had no emotional connection to at all, this was just a really nice bump up for her. So, all right. So then coming in at number 1 is a movie that I saw almost a year ago. It was right before the quarantine happened, as in like I saw it a week before, but I guess it was preparing me for what the year would be like. So this is called Swallow, and it's with Haley Bennett. And I don't know of it playing on any services. I think you have to rent it. But this is a story about a woman who's pregnant, who is seemingly in the perfect relationship. She has this absolutely gorgeous house, a husband who seems perfect, but she starts to just swallow objects that she wants to see if her body can kind of like swallow and get rid of these objects. So it's like she starts with a marble, but then she'll like work her way up to a battery or something like that. And it sounds so bizarre when you say what the film is about, but it really is about trying to have control over your life. It's the effects of sort of isolation, the lack of freedom that she had in the relationship with her husband's family being so controlling. And it's just a really interesting character study that I don't know anyone who has seen this film. It's slow. It's definitely slow. It's shot so beautifully. The color scheme is gorgeous, but you understand why she does what she does. And there is just a lot of subtlety and detail in this film. And it's the kind of thing where you may not think to yourself, I'm really enjoying this movie. Like On the Rocks is just a super enjoyable movie. So if you want to watch something that's fun, watch On the Rocks, watch Get Duked. But if you want something that almost hurts a little bit to watch, which I like movies like that, then I definitely think Swallow is worth your time. And I think Haley Bennett's performance is very underrated. It's not something I heard much about, but she really is just so great in that film. So that's my list of top 10 movies that are hidden gems for 2020. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. Are there things that I should watch? Maybe I haven't seen them yet. I would be really interested to know. So if you could just give a like to the video and subscribe if you haven't, and I will talk to you all soon. All right. Bye, guys.